Lieutenant Sarah Chen knew she shouldn't have been in Lab 7 at 3 in the morning, station time. The maintenance check could have waited until her actual shift started, but something about the quantum drive's latest diagnostics bothered her. Small fluctuations in the containment field that nobody else seemed to notice or care about. Just enough to keep her awake, staring at her cabin ceiling until she finally gave up on sleep. The Helios 7 research station hung in high orbit above Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon. Most of the station's 200 crew members were asleep, leaving the corridors eerily silent except for the constant hum of life support systems. Sarah's footsteps echoed as she made her way to the quantum research wing, her tablet displaying the concerning readouts that had drawn her from her bed. Computer, full access to Lab 7, authorization Chen Lambda 449, she spoke to the empty air. The station's AI responded with a soft chime, and the reinforced doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss. The quantum drive prototype dominated the center of the lab, a masterpiece of human engineering and alien collaboration. Its crystalline core pulsed with a soft blue light, surrounded by a complex array of containment fields and monitoring equipment. The product of 5 years of work between humanity and the Arxian Collective, it represented the future of faster-than-light travel. If it worked. Sarah approached the main control console, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface as she pulled up the latest diagnostic reports. The fluctuations were still there, tiny ripples in the quantum field that shouldn't exist. According to all their models, according to the Arxian scientists who had helped design the containment system, such variations were impossible. "Let's see what you're hiding," she muttered, initiating a level 3 diagnostic scan. The quantum core's pulse quickened slightly, its blue glow intensifying as the scan began. That's when she noticed something odd in the code scrolling across her screen. A subroutine she didn't recognize, buried deep in the containment field protocols. Sarah frowned, leaning closer to the display. The code looked human in origin, not the elegant mathematical patterns preferred by Arxian programmers. "Computer, isolate subroutine Delta 97 and display source code," she commanded. The screen filled with lines of complex quantum algorithms, but there was definitely something wrong. Someone had modified the containment field parameters, creating a deliberate weakness in the system. Sarah's heart began to race. This wasn't just a malfunction, it was sabotage. But why? And who would have the expertise to alter such complex systems without being detected? She reached for her communicator to alert station security, but her hand froze halfway. The quantum core's pulsing had changed, becoming faster, more erratic. The blue glow took on a purple tinge. "No, no, no," Sarah whispered, fingers flying across the console as she tried to stabilize the system. But it was too late. Her diagnostic scan had triggered the hidden subroutine, and now the quantum field was collapsing in on itself. Warning klaxons began to blare throughout the lab. Warning, quantum containment failure imminent. Emergency protocols engaged. All personnel evacuate immediately. Sarah knew she should run. The safety protocols were clear: in the event of a containment failure, you had exactly 90 seconds to clear the area before the emergency bulkheads sealed. But if she left now, the quantum drive would reach critical mass. The resulting explosion wouldn't just destroy the station, it would tear a hole in spacetime itself. She had to try something. Anything. Ignoring the evacuation warning, Sarah accessed the drive's core systems directly. If she couldn't stop the collapse, maybe she could redirect it. The Arxians had theorized that under certain conditions, a quantum field collapse could be channeled into a controlled cascade, creating a temporary wormhole instead of an explosion. Of course, they had never tested this theory. It was far too dangerous. "Computer, transfer all available power to the containment field," Sarah ordered, her fingers moving faster than she could think. She was operating on pure instinct now, drawing on years of experience with quantum mechanics and a desperate need to prevent catastrophe. The core's purple glow had become almost blinding. Arcs of quantum energy began to leap from the containment field, scorching the lab's walls. Sarah's skin tingled with static electricity, and her hair stood on end. 60 seconds until bulkhead seal. She rerouted power from the station's fusion reactors, pushing the containment field to its absolute limits. The hidden subroutine fought her at every step, trying to complete its programmed task of destruction. But Sarah had spent countless hours working with this system. She knew its quirks, its patterns, the way it responded to the smallest adjustments. 45 seconds. The quantum core began to vibrate, sending tremors through the entire lab. Equipment crashed to the floor. Warning messages flooded Sarah's screen faster than she could read them. 30 seconds. She had one chance left. One crazy, impossible idea that probably wouldn't work and might make things even worse. But it was better than doing nothing. Sarah accessed the core's resonance frequencies and began to modulate them in a complex pattern. If she could match the frequency of the collapse exactly, create a perfect harmonic. 15 seconds. The lab filled with a high-pitched whine that made her teeth ache. The quantum core's light shifted again, from purple to a brilliant white that seemed to bend and twist the space around it. 10 seconds. Sarah hit the final command sequence and threw herself under the nearest desk, covering her head with her arms. The world went white. Then silent. Then everything changed. When Sarah opened her eyes, the lab appeared mostly intact. The quantum core still stood in its housing, though its glow had dimmed to a faint flicker. The warning klaxons had fallen silent. She crawled out from under the desk on shaking legs, checking the console readouts. The containment field had held, barely. The quantum collapse had been redirected, just as she'd hoped. But something felt wrong. The station's artificial gravity seemed slightly off, and the stars visible through the lab's observation window looked different. "Computer," Sarah said, her voice hoarse, "what's our current position?" The AI's response sent a chill down her spine. "Error, unable to match current stellar configuration with known star charts. Additional data required for position calculation." Sarah stared at the unfamiliar constellations outside her window and realized that her desperate attempt to prevent disaster had worked a little too well. She hadn't just contained the quantum collapse, she had redirected it into an actual wormhole, one that had apparently transported the entire station to somewhere else. Her communicator crackled to life with Captain Rodriguez's voice. "All senior staff report to the bridge immediately. We have a situation." Sarah took a deep breath, straightened her uniform, and headed for the door. She had a feeling this was going to be a very long day. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, ancient machinery that had lain dormant for millennia began to hum with new life, awakened by the ripples of Sarah's quantum accident. The game board had been set, and the pieces were beginning to move. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Centauri P station was in complete disarray. Delegates from 17 different species shouted across the chamber, their universal translators struggling to keep up with the cascade of accusations and threats. In the center of it all stood Ambassador Marcus Wong, Earth's senior diplomat, trying desperately to maintain some semblance of order. "The humans must answer for this outrage," thundered High Commander Zixtal of the Arxian Collective, his crystalline form flashing angry patterns of red and orange. "Our quantum drive technology, perverted into a weapon that has disrupted the fabric of spacetime itself." Marcus resisted the urge to massage his temples. The headache that had started 3 days ago, when news of the Helios 7 incident first reached him, showed no signs of subsiding. "With all due respect, High Commander, we have already shared our preliminary findings. The quantum event was the result of sabotage, not a weapons test." "Sabotage?" The word rippled through the assembly in various frequencies and tones. From her position in the observation gallery above, Sarah Chen watched the diplomatic disaster unfold with a growing sense of dread. She hadn't slept in 4 days, not since the incident had somehow transported the Helios 7 station into the heart of the Andromeda Galaxy, directly interfering with a classified peace conference between 3 major alien federations. Lieutenant Chen, a soft voice whispered beside her. She turned to find Dr. Kvax, the station's resident Arxian quantum physicist, his crystalline form dimmed to match the low light of the gallery. "I've completed my analysis of the sabotage code. You need to see this." Sarah followed the Arxian scientist through the winding corridors of the peace station, trying to ignore the hostile glares from various alien delegates they passed. The quantum ripple had done more than just transport Helios 7, it had created a cascade of temporal distortions throughout multiple galaxies, disrupting sensitive negotiations that had been centuries in the making. Dr. Kvax's private lab was a stark contrast to the ornate diplomatic sections of the station. Holographic displays filled the air with complex quantum equations and sensor readings. "Look here," he said, gesturing to a particular sequence of code. The sabotage program wasn't just meant to destroy the quantum drive. It was searching for something. Sarah leaned closer, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. These scanning parameters, they're configured to detect quantum resonance patterns on a massive scale. But what could possibly? She was interrupted by a station-wide alert. Emergency security protocol engaged. Unknown vessels approaching through quantum space. All diplomatic personnel report to secure locations immediately. Through the lab's viewport, Sarah watched as reality itself seemed to tear open. 3 massive ships emerged from the quantum rift, their design unlike anything in known space. Their hulls seemed to shift and change, as if they weren't fully committed to existing in normal spacetime. "Impossible," Dr. Kvax whispered, his crystalline form pulsing with anxiety. "Those are precursor vessels. They shouldn't exist anymore. They disappeared from the galaxy over 50,000 years ago." Before Sarah could respond, her communicator chimed with an encrypted message from Captain Rodriguez back on Helios 7, "Chen, get back to the station now. The quantum sensors are going crazy. Whatever those ships are, they're generating the exact same energy signature as the sabotage program. This wasn't an accident, we were used to wake something up." The peace station's defensive systems activated automatically, energy shields shimming into place around the diplomatic sector. But the precursor ships made no aggressive moves. Instead, they broadcast a message simultaneously to every communication device in range, in every known language. "The signal has been received. The Great Network awakens. All species will be judged." In the Grand Assembly Hall below, the diplomatic chaos reached new heights as ancient prophecies and long-forgotten warnings suddenly gained new relevance. The Arxians' crystalline forms blazed with patterns that hadn't been seen in millennia. The normally stoic Centaurian hosts began evacuating their most sacred artifacts. Sarah turned to Dr. Kvax, whose scientific curiosity seemed to be warring with primordial fear. "What does it mean? What network?" The Arxians' response was interrupted by another message from Captain Rodriguez, "Chen, you need to see this. The quantum ripple didn't just move us through space. According to these readings, we've activated some kind of dormant quantum network that spans multiple galaxies. And something out there is using it to wake up." Sarah watched as more rifts began to appear throughout the visible starfield, each one disgorging another impossible vessel. The sabotage program, her desperate attempt to contain the quantum collapse, the peace conference, none of it had been coincidence. They had all been pieces of a plan set in motion long before humanity had even learned to make fire. "Dr. Kvax," she said slowly, "I think we're going to need a bigger lab." The Arxian scientist's form pulsed with what might have been amusement, or terror, or both. "Indeed, Lieutenant. It seems we have all been pawns in a game whose scope we are only beginning to comprehend." Below them, Ambassador Wang's voice cut through the chaos of the assembly hall. "This is no longer about individual species or ancient rivalries. Whatever is happening, whatever has been awakened, we face it together or we face destruction. For the first time in recorded history, the Grand Assembly fell completely silent. The appearance of precursor ships had accomplished what centuries of diplomacy could not, the realization that some threats transcend political boundaries and historic grievances. As Sarah rushed back to Helios 7 with Dr. Kvax, she couldn't help but wonder, had this been the plan all along? Not just the sabotage, but humanity's discovery of quantum technology, the alliance with the Arxians, even the peace conference itself? The answers were out there, hidden in the quantum network they had unknowingly activated. And time, it seemed, was running out. The holographic display in Helios 7's main lab painted Sarah Chen's face in an ethereal blue glow as she studied the quantum network map. Each point of light represented a node in the vast system they had inadvertently awakened, spreading across not just the Milky Way, but dozens of neighboring galaxies. Dr. Kvax floated nearby, his crystalline form reflecting the holographic light in hypnotic patterns. "It's beautiful," Sarah whispered, "and terrifying." Indeed, the Arxian scientist agreed. 50,000 years of dormancy, waiting for precisely the right quantum resonance to reactivate. The engineering involved is beyond anything in recorded history. The lab doors slid open with a soft hiss as Ambassador Wong entered, looking haggard after 4 straight days of emergency negotiations. "Please tell me you have something I can use to calm the Grand Assembly. The Centaurians are threatening to invoke ancient emergency protocols that would place all known space under martial law." Sarah manipulated the holographic controls, zooming in on a particular cluster of network nodes. "We've discovered something interesting about the sabotage program. It wasn't just searching for the network, it was following a map that already existed in our quantum drive's basic programming." "Impossible," Wong said. "The quantum drive was developed jointly by human and Arxian scientists. Every line of code was scrutinized." Dr. Kvax's form pulsed with what Sarah had learned to recognize as embarrassment. "Not every line. There are certain, fundamental equations that all quantum physics is built upon. We assumed they were simply mathematical constants of the universe. But what if they were left there intentionally? A message hidden in the very fabric of spacetime, waiting for a species to advance enough to read it?" Before Wong could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the intercom, multiple quantum rifts forming. "All hands to emergency stations." The holographic display erupted with new data as 3 more precursor ships emerged from quantum space. But these were different from the others, smaller, more streamlined, and heading straight for Helios 7. "They're not broadcasting any signals," Sarah reported, scanning the sensor readings. "But these energy signatures, they match exactly with the pattern we've been trying to decode from the network nodes." Lieutenant Chen, a new voice spoke, seemingly from nowhere and everywhere at once. The holographic display flickered and reformed into a humanoid figure composed of pure light and geometric patterns. "We have been watching your progress with great interest." Wong stepped forward, diplomat's instincts kicking in. "I am Ambassador Marcus Wong of Earth." "Who are you?" "Names are irrelevant. We are what remains of those you call the precursors. We are the architects of the network, the guardians of the test." Sarah's mind raced. "Test? You mean the quantum drive? The network activation?" The holographic figure shifted, its patterns becoming more complex. "For 50,000 years, we have waited for a species to achieve the right combination of technological advancement and innovative thinking. Many have discovered quantum physics. Some have even glimpsed the network's existence. But only your accident that was not an accident proved capable of understanding its true purpose." The sabotage, Dr. Kvax's crystalline form brightened with sudden understanding. "It was never meant to destroy the drive. It was a key, designed to test whether we could adapt and overcome in exactly the right way." "Correct." The figure turned to Sarah. "Your response to the containment failure was unprecedented. No other species has ever attempted to redirect a quantum collapse in such a manner. You showed both the technical skill and the creative intuition required to become network inheritors. Ambassador Wong stepped forward. I don't understand. Why all this elaborate testing? Why not simply contact us directly? The holographic figure's patterns darkened. Because what we built the network to contain is still out there, sleeping in the void between galaxies. An entity that nearly destroyed all sentient life in the universe 50,000 years ago. We could not risk awakening it until we found species capable of helping us fight it. Fight what? Sarah asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. We called it the quantum hive mind. A collective consciousness that evolved in the quantum realm itself, feeding on the mental energy of sentient beings. It discovered that fear, panic, and conflict generated the most potent energy. It orchestrated wars between species, manipulated civilizations into destroying themselves, all to feed its endless hunger. The holographic display shifted again, showing scenes of ancient battles and devastated worlds. We built the network as both a prison and an early warning system. But we knew we would not survive long enough to maintain it eternally. We needed inheritors, species with both the technological capability and the diplomatic wisdom to stand united against the hive mind when it eventually breaks free. A new alarm sounded, different from the others. Captain Rodriguez's voice was tense. Chen, Wong, were detecting massive quantum fluctuations from all active network nodes. Something's trying to break through. The holographic precursor's form began to fade. Our time grows short. The hive mind stirs, strengthened by the fear and chaos our appearance has caused. You must unite the species of this era, teach them to use the network as we once did. The final test begins now. As the figure vanished, Sarah, Wong, and Dr. Kvax watched in horror as quantum rifts began forming throughout known space. The network wasn't just a communication system or a defense grid, it was a battlefield. And they had just been drafted into a war that was 50,000 years in the making. Ambassador, Sarah said, turning to Wong, I think it's time to reconvene the Grand Assembly. We're going to need everyone for this. Wong nodded grimly. Agreed. And Lieutenant? Good work with that quantum drive malfunction. It seems your tendency to ignore safety protocols and work night shifts has saved more than just our station. Sarah managed a weak smile, but her mind was already racing with calculations and possibilities. They had inherited both a powerful tool and a terrible responsibility. Now they just had to figure out how to use one to survive the other. The Grand Assembly Hall had been transformed into a war room. Where once ornate diplomatic pods had floated in precise hierarchical patterns, now clusters of mixed species gathered around holographic tactical displays. Sarah Chen stood at the central platform with Ambassador Wong and Dr. Kvax, presenting their findings to the assembled representatives of 17 different civilizations. The quantum hive mind is already probing our defenses, Sarah explained, manipulating the holographic display to show the spreading pattern of quantum disturbances. Each burst of fear, each moment of panic, makes it stronger. It's using our own emotions as a weapon against us. High Commander Zixtal's crystalline form pulsed with troubled lights. Then we have already aided our enemy. Our reaction to the precursor ships, our diplomatic chaos, we have been feeding it without knowing. Which is exactly why we need to change tactics, Ambassador Wong stepped forward. The hive mind expects us to fragment, to turn on each other in fear. Instead, we must do the opposite. Each of our species has unique strengths. Together, we might have a chance. A harsh laugh came from the Valerian delegation, their chitinous forms clicking in agitation. Pretty words, human. But some of us remember the lessons of history. The last time species united against a common threat, the victors turned on their allies once the danger passed. Sarah watched the ripple of agreement spread through the assembly. The hive mind didn't need to attack directly, doubt and historical grievances would tear them apart just as effectively. She needed to show them something more convincing than words. "Dr. Kvax," she said, "initiate Protocol Lighthouse." The Arxian scientist hesitated for just a moment before manipulating his control panel. Throughout the assembly hall, quantum resonance fields sprang to life, connecting every being present in a carefully controlled network. "What is this?" demanded the Centaurian head of security, his tentacles writhing in alarm. "A demonstration," Sarah replied. "What you're feeling right now is a controlled version of what the hive mind does. But instead of feeding on fear, this network is powered by something else. Each of you is contributing a unique quantum signature, a piece of your consciousness. Together, they form." She didn't need to finish the sentence. They could all feel it. The network came alive with possibilities, with the combined knowledge and experience of 17 different evolutionary paths. Arxian crystal logic merged with Valerian hive processing, enhanced by human intuition and Centaurian multidimensional thinking. "This is what the precursors built the network for," Dr. Kvax explained, his form glowing with excitement. "Not just as a weapon or a defense, but as a bridge between species. A way to share understanding on the deepest level." The quantum resonance field pulsed with new energy as the assembled species began to grasp the possibilities. Ancient prejudices faced against direct experience of other perspectives. Diplomatic double-talk became impossible when thoughts could be shared directly. But the moment of unity was shattered by a violent tremor that shook the entire station. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the emergency channel, multiple quantum breaches detected. "The hive mind is making its move." The tactical displays erupted with new data as reality itself seemed to tear open. Through quantum rifts across 3 galaxies, something began to emerge. It defied description in normal space, a writhing mass of quantum probability, each fluctuation expressing a different facet of its ancient intelligence. "It's attacking the network nodes," Sarah shouted, watching as the quantum grid they had inherited from the precursors began to fluctuate wildly. "If it destabilizes enough of them, the entire system will collapse." The assembly erupted into action, but this time it was coordinated. The brief taste of unity through the quantum resonance field had shown them what was possible. Species that had been mortal enemies now worked side by side, combining their technology and expertise in ways never before attempted. Arxian crystal ships, form a containment grid. High Commander Zixtal ordered. Valerian hive minds, calculate quantum trajectories. Human vessels, prepare for resonance bombing. Ambassador Wang watched with pride as the combined fleet assembled. "The hive mind expected us to crumble. Instead, we'll show it something it has never seen before, true cooperation between species." Sarah's hands flew over the control panels, coordinating the quantum defense networks. "Dr. Kvax, we need to expand Protocol Lighthouse. If we can link the entire fleet the way we linked the assembly." The Arxian scientist was already moving, his crystalline form a blur of activity. "The power requirements will be enormous. We'll need to." He was cut off by another violent tremor. Through the station's viewports, they could see the hive mind's true form beginning to manifest. It was vast beyond comprehension, a living quantum storm that bent space and time around itself. "Energy readings are off the scale," Captain Rodriguez reported. "It's not just attacking the network, it's trying to rewrite the quantum laws of this entire sector of space." Sarah felt a familiar sensation, the same instinctive understanding that had led her to redirect the quantum drive collapse. That's it. It's not just feeding on fear anymore. It's trying to change the fundamental constants that the precursors used to build the network. "Can we stop it?" Wang asked, watching as the first wave of ships engaged the quantum storm. Sarah shared a look with Dr. Kvax. "Maybe. But we'll need to do something even crazier than last time." "Ambassador, how do you feel about rewriting the laws of physics?" Wang managed a grim smile. At this point, Lieutenant, I think we're beyond worrying about the regulations on that. As the combined fleet engaged the hive mind, Sarah began to formulate a plan that would either save multiple galaxies or tear reality itself apart. The next few hours would determine not just the fate of their species, but the very nature of spacetime itself. And somewhere in the quantum storm, she could feel the hive mind's ancient consciousness turning its attention toward her. It recognized the architect of its awakening, and it was curious about what she would do next. Sarah Chen had always been good at seeing patterns. It's what had drawn her to quantum mechanics in the first place, the elegant mathematics that underpinned reality itself. Now, as she stood at the control center of the combined fleet, she saw the ultimate pattern. The quantum hive mind wasn't just trying to destroy them. It was trying to remake the universe in its own image. All ships report ready, Captain Rodriguez announced, his voice tight with tension. The Arxian crystal ships have established their resonance grid. Valerian hive processors are at maximum capacity. Human quantum drives are synchronized. Dr. Kvax's crystalline form pulsed with rapid calculations as he integrated data from all fleet elements. The hive mind's quantum storm is expanding exponentially. Time-space distortions are approaching critical levels in multiple sectors. Through the massive viewing window of the command center, Sarah watched the battle unfold. The combined fleet looked tiny against the vast, writhing mass of the hive mind's manifestation. Ships from 17 different species, once bitter enemies, now moved in perfect coordination, their weapons barely holding back the tide of quantum chaos. Protocol Lighthouse is stable, Ambassador Wong reported from his station. All species remain connected through the quantum resonance field. But we're losing network nodes faster than we can reinforce them. Sarah took a deep breath, her mind racing through quantum equations and probability matrices. The precursors built their network into the fabric of reality itself. They hid the keys to it in fundamental mathematical constants. But what if we could change those constants? Impossible, one of the Valerian scientists chittered. The fundamental constants are just that, fundamental. They cannot be altered without destroying reality itself. Exactly, Sarah's eyes lit up with the same dangerous inspiration that had led her to redirect the quantum drive collapse. The hive mind is trying to rewrite physics. But what if we beat it to it? What if we could change the constants just enough to trap it? Dr. Kvax's form flickered with sudden understanding. The quantum resonance field, if we could channel enough energy through Protocol Lighthouse, use the combined processing power of all our species. We could rewrite the rules, Sarah finished. But we'd need more power than all our ships combined could generate. Ambassador Wong stepped forward, his diplomatic calm giving way to fierce determination. The precursor ships. They're still out there, watching. If they truly want us to be their inheritors. As if in response to his words, the massive precursor vessels began to move. They took up positions around the edges of the battle, their impossible geometries shifting as they interfaced with the quantum resonance field. They're offering their power, Dr. Kvax announced, his crystalline form blazing with excitement. Combined with our fleet, it might be enough. Sarah's fingers flew over the control panels, calculating the precise adjustments needed. We'll have one shot at this. If we get it wrong, we could collapse all of reality instead of just trapping the hive mind. Better than letting it win, Rodriguez growled. All ships, prepare for final protocol on Lieutenant Chen's mark. The quantum resonance field hummed with the combined consciousness of 17 species plus the ancient power of the precursors. Sarah could feel them all, their fears, their hopes, their determination. The hive mind sensed it too, its attack intensified, reality warping and buckling under its assault. Now! Sarah commanded, initiating the sequence she and Dr. Kvax had desperately conceived. Every ship in the fleet, every precursor vessel, every surviving network node activated simultaneously. The quantum resonance field expanded, encompassing the entire battle zone. Through it, Sarah guided the combined power of multiple civilizations in the most ambitious manipulation of quantum mechanics ever attempted. The fundamental constants of reality began to shift, just slightly, just in this sector of space. The hive mind's own power worked against it, its attempts to rewrite physics making it vulnerable to their countermanipulation. Reality itself seemed to scream as space-time twisted in impossible ways. The hive mind's form began to distort, caught in the mathematical trap they had created. It fought back, lashing out with quantum tentacles that could erase entire ships from existence. But the fleet held firm, each species contributing its unique strengths to maintain the quantum resonance field. The Arxians provided crystalline precision, the Volarians contributed parallel processing power, humans added intuitive problem-solving, and each other species brought their own vital capabilities. Containment field is stabilizing, Dr. Kvax reported. The local constants are holding at new values. The hive mind's form contracted, compressed by the altered physics of the space around it. Its vast consciousness raged against the trap, but the more it fought, the more it became entangled in the new quantum rules they had written. With a final surge of power from the precursor ships, the trap closed completely. The hive mind's form collapsed into a singularity of altered spacetime, bound by mathematical constants it could never adapt to. Silence fell across the quantum resonance field as the combined fleet realized what they had achieved. They had not destroyed the hive mind, perhaps nothing could truly destroy such an entity, but they had imprisoned it more securely than even the precursors had managed. All ships report in, Rodriguez ordered, his voice hoarse. Damage assessment. As the reports came in, Sarah felt a presence in the quantum field, the precursor consciousness reaching out one final time. You have exceeded all expectations, the ancient voice echoed in their minds. The network is yours now, truly and completely. Use it wisely, use it together, and perhaps you will achieve what we could not, a unity that transcends species without sacrificing individuality. The precursor ships began to fade from normal space, their task finally complete after 50,000 years. But they left behind their network, now modified and strengthened by the combined ingenuity of 17 different species. Ambassador Wong turned to Sarah, a tired smile on his face. Well, Lieutenant Chen, it seems your habit of working late and ignoring safety protocols has saved rather more than just our research station. Sarah laughed, the sound carrying through the quantum resonance field and bringing smiles, or their species equivalents, to faces across the fleet. They had done more than just save themselves, they had proven that different species could work together, could quite literally share consciousness and still maintain their unique identities. As the fleet began the long process of rebuilding the damaged sectors of space, Sarah looked out at the stars, unchanged to the naked eye, but now holding a slightly different mathematical music in their quantum depths. The universe was a little different now, and so were they all. The hive mind was contained, the precursors had found their worthy inheritors, and 17 species had learned that their differences made them stronger together than apart. Not a bad outcome for what had started as a late-night maintenance check. Dr. Kvax, Sarah said, turning to her friend and colleague, I think we're going to need to update those quantum physics textbooks. The Arxian's crystalline form sparkled with what she now recognized as laughter. Indeed, Lieutenant. Indeed we will.